Hey there, YouTube. It's me again. Adjust microphone boom. Hopes the noise is not horrifying. Just getting something queued up. Or rather, getting my phone queued up so I can view chat without looking up to my PC every 5 minutes, as we are currently on my floor. Welcome to my floor. It is, I don't know, marginally less filthy than usual, but only marginally, you know. It's not that special of an occasion. Or maybe it is, considering how rarely I upload. But tish. Okay, here we go. Nope. Gonna go ahead and get that muted. I do not need to listen to an echo of myself. That is not going to do me any good. It's just gonna be that sort of thing where, like, you know, when you have an echo of yourself just like a second behind, there is nothing that is harder to talk over than that. At least for me. I am led to believe this is not an isolated point of view, but I could be wrong. So, it has been a while since I uploaded a video working on this project, but in that time, one of the things I made sure to do is I have one of the two arms completely scaled. Yeah, no, sorry, trying to work out where exactly is center of frame right now. And I did that in order to make sure I had my methodology down as much as I wanted it to be. So that now I can do the second arm with having all the other little problems sorted out. So the first thing I need to do is I need to get this additional muscle plate. Here, I'm actually gonna shift my phone on its little stand over here so that I can better see when I am or am not in frame. Unfortunately, this is not a great phone stand, so it's going to take a sec to adjust this. Sorry about the hold up. Okay, there we go. That is set up pretty nicely. Shoot, I'm getting all my other tech stuff set up. I did not get my hot glue gun plugged in. The crux of this whole operation. As without a hot glue gun, this is not really going to go anywhere. So, this is something I'm going to cover more succinctly in the video itself, because I may have figured out an easier way to do this. What I am currently going to do, once I get the hot glue gun heated up, is I have 3 thicknesses of scales here. I have 3 millimeter thick, 2 millimeter thick, and 1.5 millimeter thick, with glitter on the back of it, which I had to sand off so it'd actually stick. The muscle plates are all also 3 millimeter thick. So to try to transition from a thick scale to a thin scale, I'm going to go from this muscle plate. I'm going to have the adjacent scale be a 3 millimeter that I can have a 1.5 millimeter glued on top of, then a 3 millimeter, then a 2 millimeter, then a 1.5 millimeter. Yeah, I may be over engineering that, but it does result in a sleeker scale arm that is more flexible. But it is entirely possible that you could, take out an entire middle step there. As I just recently, all the craft foam I use, I've gotten from a local hobby store, which is arguably not super high quality craft foam. And recently, I was looking at some of the good stuff that. I can't remember the name of the cosplayer, but it was someone's brand name of craft foam. There's a plate I'm missing. Shoot, that's going to take me a quick sec. I got to figure out where that missing foam plate is at. Aha! There we go. I had piles of this stuff sitting around. Okay. As essentially for, I've got another plate I need to add to the upper arm, and then a reverse version of that plate that I'm going to add to the forearm. Because in previous videos, I have only ever had these plates on the upper arm. So, let's see if I remember right on the other arm. Yep, it comes up just barely over that. So, for the sake of the video, I am placing this plate over the top of these two arm plates right here, trying to get it to where it sort of lines up with this line on the quilted fabric here, and sort of follows those contours. Okay, there we go. So, hopefully, yeah, it looks like that showed up on camera. So I'm going to go ahead, quick little bead of hot glue there. Okay, so we have this situated exactly where we want it to be. In every previous iteration, I've tried to have the plates completely free-floating from each other. But in my experimenting with this version, I found out that doesn't necessarily need to be the case. The craft foam is flexible enough that I can have these three plates of the upper arm connected, and it will still have plenty of flex, so that it will not at all impede my arm movement. All right, so we have this plate over the other muscles, which once we get to gluing scales, won't necessarily present an additional difficulty, but it will be something to address. But addressing it is actually going to be pretty trivial. I'm going to scoot over half a cheek. I'm sure that's the technical measurement of being seated, is measured in cheeks. Hey, Nate. Oh yeah, this is still for Thor, which will probably be worn at, assuming it doesn't get canceled, Denver Comic-Con, which so far I haven't heard anything about it being canceled, and also possibly FanX, which is in Salt Lake City. As essentially I had heard that Adam Savage is going to be attending that, and I have always wanted to meet Adam Savage. So I don't know if this is necessarily what I'll wear to FanX. I kind of feel like it might be, since you know, it is my most elaborate costume that I've spent the most time on, and I just want Adam Senpai to notice me. I don't know if I'll do a lot more to my Thor costume this year. You know, if I had all the time in the world, I'd rebuild a lot of things from the bottom up. But I have, you know, I wanted to build a new scale suit for it, partially to make this video, and partially because I know I can make a better one than I've made previously. On top of that, I may light up the costume a little bit, as in Endgame and Infinity War. The round parts of his armor light up. He doesn't really do that in any of the movies I have made Thor costumes from, but hey, what's cool for the goose is cool for the gander, I suppose. All right, so what I am doing now is I am adding the lower arm plates, which is something I have had lower arm plates on previous costumes, but I'm doing something a little bit more elaborate this time. 1, 2, 3, 4. All right, that is about the distance I've had. I'm trying to kind of get this lined up with where I have it on the other arm. Not that it's necessarily going to be too critical, but you know, it doesn't have to be entirely 100% the same, but it will look weird if it's too lopsided. So again, the upper line of this plate is gonna line up with a specific row of scales, which I hope is showing up on the camera. If not, I will, when I am converting all these into the actual guide video, I will I don't know, I think I'm going to use a whiteboard to help illustrate any points that I may not have adequately described. So the other thing I'm going to do with gluing this plate in here, I'm going to try to move that mic a little bit closer. I'm not sure how my volume levels are. I hope they're fine. Is the sleeves that I cut have absolutely no taper. They are purely a straight tube of fabric, which is not ideal. It's got all the scales lined up, but it will result in a big old baggy bunch of fabric to tuck into the gauntlets, which at this point I'm debating on like building the gauntlets onto the sleeves. Like I feel like that might save me some headache. Okay, so that's about 3 fingers worth. Gosh, to have an extra set of arms or an assistant. Alright, gonna get 1 bead of hot glue there. So, to more clearly specify what I'm doing, I am going to use the position of this muscle plate to hide the taper of this sleeve. Now, that will result in some scale positioning possibly being a little bit weird, but at the point it starts getting weird, the scale armor will be underneath Thor's bracers. So, shoot. I might not have that as lined up with the elbow as I want it to be. Okay. All right. So, I know it's really hard to see what I'm doing here, but I'm essentially getting all that fabric bunched under this muscle plate. So, oh, I need a new hot glue stick, which also means this is going to be very hard to do upside down. Oh, here we go. I'll do this. All right. All right. All right, there we go. Positioning on that is looking pretty good, and everything underneath it is tucked underneath the plate. So that is not going to look weird. Okay, so going to get that front layer, that front edge, that leading edge, glued down. Why do you like doing Thor for most of your cons? You know, it's an interesting rut I kind of got stuck in. Because certainly part of me wishes that I had like expanded my cosplay portfolio more, and I have a few costumes that I just haven't really done videos on. Initially, me and a group of 2 other guys had talked about doing the big 3 Avengers. One of us does Cap, one of us does Iron Man, and one of us does Thor. And I kind of ended up doing Thor because I had the longest hair out of all of us, which mostly just meant I had something like 1 step above a buzz cut. So didn't even really have long hair back then. And then once I started doing it, well, for one, I got a certain amount of attention from the ladies when I was cosplaying as Thor, which was incredibly gratifying, let me tell you. Then it's sort of, that was back when I did the costume from the first Avengers movie. Then Thor the Dark World came out, which, for everything that can be said about Thor the Dark World, and many people have said a lot of things about it, mostly negative. A lot of the visual design was really good in Thor the Dark World, at least I think. And the costume in that, like, after I'd built the Avengers costume, I saw that and was like, oh, I want to build that. There we go. That's where I want to place that one. So then it's just sort of kind of turned into my thing where for a lot of cons I'll typically wear two costumes, one of which will be new and another one will be a Thor. As for Age of Ultron, his costume was very similar to his Thor the Dark World costume. So then I basically looked at that and said, all right, I want to fix everything I don't like about how I did the Dark World costume, which mostly turned into using better materials. I would say my pattern making techniques were better, but like 90% of why that costume turned out better than my second one was simply using better materials. Real leather, those facade sink backsplash tiles. That was most of it. So I'm thinking that's more baggy than I want it to be, but that might just be because I'm comparing it to my completely scaled version. Okay, no, but I think as far as the muscle plates go, those are in pretty good situation. Just enough of a gap for flexibility. And this is not impossible to shimmy out of. And it's cooler than most of my other Thor scales, but that's still not to say that it's cool, because spring is finally starting to show up where I live. And even sitting in my apartment, that is a little bit toasty. So, all right, let's start. Let's start adding some scales. So, all right, gonna get that back layer. God, I keep using that word when I'm talking about the edges of these things. So, what's the best edge for me to demonstrate this on? Here we go. This will be a good edge to demonstrate this on. All right. So, I didn't bring a pair of scissors. Give me a quick sec, guys. I'll be right back. Let's see, besides Thor and Beta Ray Bill, what other superheroes would I want to make? Well, I've talked about doing a Colossus costume. It'd be pretty cool. For superheroes, for DC, I do like Green Lantern, like conceptually, but I'd have to shave my beard to do that, and I don't like the idea of shaving my beard. I'd like to think I'm not super insecure about the way I look without a beard, but it's possible I might be just a little bit insecure about the way I look without a beard. Like, I just have this like fond idea of how much chin I have, and it just doesn't line up with reality. As far as I know, they haven't added a new Green Lantern that has a beard. Certainly, as far as non-superheroes go, Eomir's 100% on my list. I do have a Star Wars project, which is kind of the next big one I want to work on, that I can't wait to start working on and start telling you guys about. But I want to get this done because I have been not doing this for too long. Oh, shoot, any other superheroes I'd want to do? I say looking over at my graphic novel shelf. I don't know, as far as superheroes, oh, that's one. Although, not Western superheroes, I kind of want to make an All Might costume, but not like super fit All Might. I want to make All Might, I should specify, from My Hero Academia, which I don't watch nearly as much anime as I used to. And maybe I'm a filthy scrub for watching the popular thing everybody's into. But now, I'm not caught up on the new season, but All Might is a superhero who has sustained some incredibly massive injuries, and should not be heroing anymore. And he is. He has sort of a face he puts on for the rest of the world where he's still muscular and fit and ready to fight. And then he has what he actually looks like, which is haggard and skeletal, with these glowing, like aqua-colored eyes staring out of deep sunken sockets. And he's usually just wearing like a t-shirt and some pants that are that are made to fit his superhero physique, so they just hang baggy on him. And part of me wants to make that costume. Like I've looked at that face, which has like a very specific, almost inhuman structure. And I've looked at that and thought about how to make it, which is mostly, flesh-colored craft foam and pantyhose over the top of it. It would. And I kind of just want to give sage advice to the other younger superheroes. How about you, Nate? Do you have any projects you're working on right now? I think you mentioned Hyperlight Drifter at one point, if I'm remembering right. If not, I am totally sorry, as you are pretty much the one person who interacts on these streams. So I also apologize if that kind of one-on-one interaction is kind of intimidating. You need to you need to be keeping up the effort of an entire chat on your own. It's I don't know, that's a lot. That's a lot to expect of someone. But man, it's just I think I am. I wouldn't say burnt out on Thor, but I think unless there's just something absolutely crazy that comes out for Love and Thunder, I might have I don't know, artistically said what I have to say about cosplaying as Thor. I already, when I get to a point where I have a decent workshop I can set up in, I kind of want to display all my old Thor costumes, or at least part of them. I've kept the the fronts from my 3 other Thor costumes, because that includes I can't remember if I've ever posted anything about that on my channel, but I built a Infinity War Thor costume, which was just sort of a quick and dirty craft foam chest piece to go with Stormbreaker last year when my hair was too short to do the version of Thor I typically like to do. Which, kind of going back vaguely related to that All Might topic, when I talk about lighting up a Thor costume, I also have some thoughts about how I'd get my eyes to light up. I have a rig that I'm sort of kicking around in my brain that I want to try putting together. But while I've been talking about that, what I've done there is what I'm talking about with going from the plate to a 3 to a 1.5, or sorry, a 3 to a 2 to a 1.5. That is essentially what I'm going to be doing with the rest of this arm, going from the muscle plates to this. Now, the fiddly part is going to be all these places where the muscle suit does not line up with the scales on the... oh, excuse me. With the quilts on this. Which, that is where my container of, when you're cutting out the scales, I ended up with a lot of pieces on the edge where it's just half a scale. This is where all those are going to come in handy. Because I can totally cut a scale in half, but if I've already got half scales, no reason not to use those. I may need to get another lamp set up just for lighting purposes. Okay, so all right, I right now am going to keep working on this underarm section here. All right, so all right. All right, that doesn't quite fit that one. So yeah, this is going to be a fairly laborious process, but it's also a pretty cathartic one. It's nice to just have, it's the road trip of cosplay projects, where it's just like, just going to get out and chase the horizon for a while. Yep, yeah, I'm the Hyperlight Drifter guy. I remade the sword, which looks much better. I need to remake the mask, but I've been making a Skyward Sword link. Oh, dude! But it's been on and off. But all my recent cons, I've been doing Spider-Man because it's comfortable and looks real good. Like, dude, if you have the physique, and God, I hope that doesn't sound judgy to be like, oh, well, if you're not fit enough to be Spider-Man, you shouldn't be Spider-Man. But, dude, if you can, like, do a Spider-Man, that'd be amazing. Like, my favorite superheroes growing up were, like, Spider-Man and Wolverine. And I have weird rules in my brain about who I personally am allowed to cosplay that I don't apply to anybody else. But I will never do a Spider-Man cosplay because I'm too tall to be Spider-Man. And I know, dude, I know how dumb that sounds. I am, like, so acutely aware of how dumb that sounds. But yeah, no, it's just part of my, like, fundamental psychological programming. Or maybe it's an excuse, who knows. But yeah, no, I had, like, a similar thought when, like, Endgame came out. We sort of heard about the, like, time travel suits early. And I was looking at those for a while and was like, I would love to do a Thor costume where I just get to walk around in something like that all day. But I think that year I wore my regular Thor costume, essentially, or I had planned that, and then Endgame came out before the con. And I'm glad I didn't plan on wearing that time travel suit because Thor didn't really look the way the action figures portrayed him looking in that time travel suit. And I'm afraid people on the con floor would have called me out for being a liar. So, shoot, I had another tangent. Oh, that's right. I was going to mention because I know Skyward Sword Link has like a little bit of chainmail. And I don't know how much you've done with chainmail, if you've ever done anything with that. But what you could look at if you don't necessarily want to like make a strip of actual chainmail, which, you know, or even a full shirt. Bro, that'd be hardcore, wearing a full shirt of actual chain under Link's tunic. If you wanted to make a strip of fake chainmail to go at like the edge of Link's tunic, I've kind of cheated for Spider-Man. It's the homemade homecoming suit, but it's nearly spot on to the movie. Mine's better than most people's. Oh, dude, like that sounds awesome, because it's totally hearkening to, what was that, like Scarlet Spider from the 90s, and just like the proto Peter Parker is, I don't know, it's been forever since I watched Homecoming, but I mean, like, all the big emotional stuff in that movie happened in that costume. So yeah, I could totally see that. Sorry, to finish the thought from earlier, there is a craft foam pattern to make foam chainmail. And I've got, I think they're buried somewhere. But I've tried it out. It's the sort of thing that you can. Here, let me back up. I'm doing this all out of order. If you go to Adam Savage's Tested, like Adam Savage's YouTube channel, he did a video on it, and that video has a link to the guy who designed this pattern. And it's either a pattern that you can cut on a laser cutter, but if you don't have access to that, I think he's looking at selling sheets of the stuff. But just having that little bit of chainmail on the edge of Link's tunic would be absolutely amazing. And I've wanted to play around with that one. Oh, yeah. What I haven't tried yet, and what I really want to try, is the same way I paint these foam scales with that glossy black fabric paint, and then painting the metallic over the top of that. Because, you know, it's made out of the same foam I'm making this out of, and I can get a really good metallic finish out of this. So you could get some very metallic looking chainmail that would still be easy to make, lightweight, and comfortable. I mean, alternatively, I've also made actual chainmail out of links I've bought from, and I'm not saying any of this to advertise any specific site, but there's a site called The Ring Lord, which like provided chainmail for, I think it was the Hobbit movies, actually, where they provided a it might have been a specific scale for some of the dwarf armor. But yeah, no, they make decent stuff. And I admittedly haven't shopped around a whole lot, but I don't imagine there's a ton of better prices out there. But they have several different kinds of scales you could look at, as far as like silver scales do, like aluminum or plastic. So yeah, I was thinking of doing real mail, but just attach it to the edges, so that I'm not wearing a full shirt, but it still has some weight, and then it still has the chain sound when I move. Oh, absolutely. Like that sound of someone walking around in chainmail. Like, not often do people talk about like the audio component of certain costumes. And I have a brother who has worn a full set of like chain and scale mail, and just walking down a hallway in that. Like, we were in the hotel, and this guy waiting at the elevator just heard him walking down the hallway in this full suit of scale mail, and just had no idea what was going to come around the corner. But yeah, that is 100%. Because I've, idly toyed with the idea of doing a Link costume too, and thought about doing that exact thing. The issue that you might possibly run into I don't know, is that the drape might be weird of having a band of chainmail at the bottom of a shirt, of like the undershirt, like the white shirt underneath his tunic, which is not to discourage you from compensate for or plan for, to just get like a short sleeve of like a nice dense fabric, like a canvas thing. Like you just take sort of from the shoulder of a short sleeved shirt to about where a short sleeved shirt would end, and you attach the chainmail to that, because then it shouldn't pull on the shirt in a way that's weird. That would make it drape weird or make it uncomfortable. That might be something to think about. That's not something I've tried. That's just something I've played out in my brain. Let's see. So this is where this turns into a game of what scales do I want to use. If I want to coat the entire thing in the thinner scales or the thicker scales, and I think I have plenty of the thinner scales. It is the sort of thing where the good news is, for anybody who watched the previous videos, I cut out like twice as many scales as I need. So anybody who went, oh, he spent like 4 hours cutting out scales, I don't think I want to do this. I have way too many scales. Do. Yep, that still fits. So where I have like the sleeves joined to the short sleeve shirt, it does look a little bit goofy, but getting the scales over the top of it, it's all going to look joined together. Tell me if I'm pronouncing your name correctly. Giorno. Giovanna, you have a dream? Tell us of this dream. So long as it, is follows YouTube's terms of service and guidelines and, all that good stuff. Sorry, I don't mean to call you out like that. To be the greatest mafioso. You see, my first impulse is to do a bad gangster accent to read that, but a bad gangster accent is basically a racist Italian accent, and I don't know if I want to do that. I don't know if I want the internet to be mad at me, or to be mad that I don't feel like I should do that. I feel like there is a dangerous, slippery slope when it comes to funny voices that are specifically racial. I think you're going to have to be ready to whack a couple stoolies, though. Which I will 100% tell you quickly became my favorite euphemism for having to go use the bathroom is, I'm sorry, boss, I got to go whack a stoolie. Gonna get him some cement shoes, watch him sink to the bottom. This is where I trail back to previous thoughts that I don't know if I ever finished. So, if you use higher quality, higher density craft foams, it is entirely possible that you don't have to do this whole 3mm thick, 2mm thick, 1mm thick thing, then you can basically just get away with 2mm thick and 1.5mm thick. This is tough to do in this particular seated position. I can't really have a chair when I'm on the floor. I might hit a point where I run out of glue sticks this stream. You suffer with trying to make a costume so perfect that it never gets done. Dude, 100% of the time. That is... You have seen into the darkest pits of my soul. It is a decent... there is a very good argument to be made. That is why I've made the same costume like 5 times. Oh, man. I do feel like to a certain extent it is healthy to go back to an idea you had previously and revisit it with newly found skills. But I have very much had to fight like the phrase I've heard people use that like perfectly sums this up is the perfect is the enemy of the good. Where like you try so much to get it perfect that you never even get it good. And that is honestly where making a costume for a con where you have a deadline really comes in handy. Where and this is where I continue to reveal my massive man crush on Adam Savage, as he's pointed out, which I'm sure many other people have said. The costume's done when it's time to walk out for the con, and people will be working on it like minutes before they walk out on the floor. Which, when you start, if you have problems with this and you recognize problems with this, it often really helps to. That's actually a really good mechanism for prioritizing, or rather, that specific challenge gives you a reason to go through a costume and say, okay, what is the most important part of this? And you do that first, and you do as much of the perfecting, the spit and polish to that as you can make time for. And then on the less important parts, you can say, all right, these I can kind of get away with a lick and a promise on, and maybe fix them up later, maybe not. Which is often why I will make like the main prop for a costume first, and then a lot of other things later. But I have, and it kind of doesn't feel good to say, you know what? I'm as done with this particular part as I need to be, but you know, nobody has an infinite amount of time. Sometimes you just gotta make that call and say, all right, this is. As far as the performance aspect of cosplay goes and going out and showing it to people, you know, most people are not going to notice what you are going to notice, having, you know, watched this thing get built from the inside out and having that kind of relationship to it. But ultimately, you are making it for you. You are ultimately making it for the satisfaction of it. And I think to an extent, like you know, con is my vacation for the year. and it is just lovely to walk around and have people enjoy the thing I worked on. But at the end of the day, I get most of my enjoyment from making it, as opposed to walking out on a con floor with it. So you never want to shortchange yourself to a point where you don't feel good about the thing you're making. And that's ultimately what it comes down to, is doing what's best for you. You know, on the other arm, I actually went through and on the plate cut out the outlines of the scales there, but I think that just kind of took more time than what it was worth. I think I'm just going to take a bunch of half scales here. And glue them on. Oh shoot, I put down the glue for 2 scales at a time, and that was a bad idea, as you really kind of have to put down the glue one at a time, because if it cools even just a little bit, you're not going to get as good of adhesion as you want. Okay, so I am going to trim this corner just a smidge so that it lines up with that scale a lot better. Wiping extra hot glue off. Like, when you're doing stuff like this with hot glue, I think you just kind of have to resign yourself to a certain amount of getting burned. Which is part of why I do this with a low temp hot glue gun, because yeah, no, I have gotten high temp hot glue gun burns and they suck. Yeah, I spend most of my time trying to make costumes sturdy and reliable. Very good policy. You usually have to do things the harder way to make them stronger. That is an excellent practice. I've made the exact opposite mistake, where I've, made stuff pretty but not reinforced it enough. And especially when it comes to like a day of costuming, there's nothing worse than having your costume fail on you like part of the way through the day, and it's just like, well, I spent all this time on this cool thing, and now I'm going to walk back to my hotel room off and do something else, because this just isn't going to work. But they usually take much, much longer, which kind of sucks. Oh, yeah, because that's the thing, is it's like, I don't know, I usually work on like one thing for the entire year for a con. I usually have time for that, but not always. Usually I end up in a crunch, kind of running myself through the ringer, which is all, it's all a planning failure on my part in that circumstance. Trying gluing a scale and applying it, as opposed to, yeah, nope, it's faster to apply the glue to the shirt. Yeah, that was actually what happened with my Hyperlight Drifter costume. It wasn't a structural failure necessarily, but the mask was causing my glasses to fog up. The lights I'd put in the forearms, I didn't have like any kind of cover over them, so my sweat ate into the batteries, and they leaked battery acid onto my arms. Yeah, no, I did not get as much walk on the con floor in that Hyperlight Drifter costume as I would have liked. I did get a couple compliments on it. I did get a couple people who were just like absolutely psyched about it. And I still want to, I've been going through and planning out like where I would want to take pictures with that costume. And I think there is a little bit I would need to try to do in spring. Because in spring, at least in the section of the United States I live in, there are trees during the spring where the leaves on them are kind of a purple magenta color. And there's that region in Hyperlight Drifter full of like purple colored trees and turquoise colored crystals and like chains hanging from the trees. Part of me wants to like take a picture in what would look like each of the 4 areas of the map. God, I really wish there was just more Hyperlight Drifter. I am pretty excited for that Solar Ash Kingdom game that they're working on. Heart Machine, the group that made Hyperlight Drifter, working on a game called Solar Ash Kingdom. As much as, you know, part of me would love for that artist to just make more of the same stuff. I appreciate and respect them going through and you know, saying, all right, we're gonna do something new. I mean, heck, the fact that Hyperlight Drifter was in that one like Super Smash Brothers, calling it a Super Smash Brothers knockoff is not fair. It is a Super Smash Brothers type game, and I can't remember what it was called. I always want to say Brawlhalla, but I know it's not Brawlhalla. Of course, when that came out, I was like, all right, so this is another version of what Hyperlight Drifter looks like. Because I think it's gotten to the point where people just call him Hyperlight Drifter, even though I think the character is called the Magician, but I'm not 100% sure on that. Maybe that was just on the Steam trading cards, and who can take a Steam trading card as canon? Also, I apologize if you guys can hear any kind of like ceramic pot bubbling in the background. That is a slow cooker, slow cooking a pot roast. Not a pot roast, a pork roast. That will be my dinner. That is the thing I will do for myself, is I will... I've done good today. Now I'm going to eat some real food. I'm going to eat real people food. Yeah, looks like... I don't know, stream just blipped for a sec. I hope that's fine. Looks like it's fine. Everything's fine. Everything is 100% fine. Can't remember if I mentioned it on the stream, but when you were talking about the Skyward Sword Link costume, and we were talking about that foam chainmail, one of my like bucket list costumes is Éomer from Lord of the Rings, and when I saw that foam chainmail, I was like, oh, this is how I'm gonna do it. This is how I'm gonna do it. I mean, partially because like Éomer's chainmail is like a really specific color. It's just like halfway between a copper and a silver. And that, you know, because I've looked at doing like actual chainmail for that, and that's always been my hang up, because it's like, okay, do I get silver chainmail and I spray painted just a little bit copper? Yeah, and I've just never been 100% happy with those answers. Yeah, Solar Ash Kingdom looks like it'll be cool. Heart Machine released an article where they said they might make a cartoon for Hyperlight Drifter. Oh, dude, which would be amazing. 100%. Like, I would watch the shit out of that. Sorry, I said a swear on the YouTubes. I need to be careful for the tender children's ears. Alright. So that's the thing, is it's like up here in the armpit, where you're dealing with this seam here that you didn't control, your scales can get a little bit off kilter, but that's fine, because it's the armpit that's going to be one of the least visible parts. What paint you use to paint your craft foam? Glossy black fabric paint. Here, let me go grab a tube. I don't recommend a specific brand. It's just this kind of stuff. Looks like my stream might be having some trouble, so I'm going to go ahead and close down what I was listening to. Here, I'll be right back. So it's this stuff, which hopefully, is that right side up? Yep, I'm holding it right side up. This brand, I think, is one of the more common ones, the easier to find. Tulip Slick. So do a base coat of that. If you're trying it on the chainmail, I'd try a couple light base coats. Like, you don't want to gum up the chainmail, but a couple coats of that. And then you can paint over it with literally any acrylic paint. So just get yourself a nice silver acrylic paint. And, you know, by all means, like I'm giving you permission, with the chainmail, that really might turn into the kind of thing where giving the paint job some depth would pay some pretty big dividends. Going with a couple different silvers, sort of getting like a wash of gunmetal, and then sort of a regular silver over that, and then a nice bright silver to highlight the very edges of the scales. But that's something I haven't tried yet. I have, I know somebody who has a laser cutter, so I had a couple of sheets of that scale mail cut out because I really wanted to try that pinning technique and see if it works out. And I'm afraid I just haven't yet. Partially because to get that foam chainmail to work, you need to use a heat gun to get it to kind of lay flat, and I do not have a heat gun. I never quite got around to ordering one before people started getting severely incentivized to stay at home. I'm going off of what I've heard on a Game Grumps stream, that if you talk about what is going on in the world right now by name, that you will get that you are incapable of monetizing your video, which currently I'm incapable of monetizing things anyway because I don't have enough view hours or subscribers or whatever, because YouTube changed the rules. But I think I'll refrain from talking about it by name, just kind of, you know, in case I hit that point when this video is still anything people will watch. Yeah, no, I haven't ordered a heat gun because I've been trying to not order a bunch of stuff online. Just to reduce the amount of package flow. I have ordered a few things, mostly from like small independent artists, because I figure that should be where I spend my stimulus check. The big guys will be fine. The little guys are who's going to need a little bit of help. Haven't looked at my local Chinese restaurant to see how they're doing. Because if there's one thing I do not need to lose in my town, it's the good place to go get Chinese food. I also don't need to lose Quiznos, but I can't quite talk myself into driving an hour to the next town to get Quiznos to make sure they stay open with everything that's going on. Because it is hard to find a Quiznos anymore. Not just in this area. Whenever I travel anyplace else, people will be like, oh yeah, we used to have a Quiznos here. And I'm just like, no, dude, no. Don't. Alright, so I know as I'm getting here closer to the elbow joint is where I will probably end up with a row that has absolutely no scales on it. So I want to do at least one row of scales on the edge of the plate, but then I'm probably not going to need more on top of that. One of the other things I want to do for lighting up a Thor costume is I want to build a new Mjolnir that has a really good light up effect. See, how crazy is your city being for the quarantine? Honestly, not that much. I live in a pretty small town where it's really not that crowded. I do feel like people are not following the stay-at-home order as much as they should. Like not by a long shot. And I work in a slightly nicer retail establishment where people are not flipping their biscuits as much as they could be. So I've kind of been trying to, anytime at work, project an air of normalcy. You know, because yeah, people go out to buy necessities, but when they do, it's nice for them to feel like everything is normal in at least some regard. Which I hope things are all right for where where there. See, this is what happens when I try to do that whole human empathy thing. I hope things are fine where you're at. I'm in a situation where I'm fine, essentially. I live alone, so I don't really have to worry about spreading it to anybody else. I still have a job. You know, I can't really complain about that. Like, work has been exhausting, but that's more just because I don't really work at a, it's a chill store, but there are some problems there. It's ultimately just not a good place to work. But that's just kind of on me. Pays the bills for now. Because again, going back to it, like, at least I still have a job, which is more than what some people can say. But boy, howdy, let me tell you, I am itching to get quarantined. I know quarantine has been ruddy, let me tell you. I am itching to get quarantined. I know quarantine has been rough on some other people, but if I were to just be 100% stuck at home, there would be a lot more progress stuff like this, let me tell you. Because I've still been going to work 5 days a week. Well, maybe 4. Just because that's where hours are sorted out right now. But working on stuff like this, like, sometimes it is hard. God, I've been doing this too long. We're just feeling one of these. I'm like, oh yeah, no, that's definitely a 3 and not a 2. Man, I lost my train of thought. I've still been going out every day, where I know quarantine has been hard on a lot of other people. I'm at a point where I haven't had to do it for weeks, so whenever I have to start quarantine fresh, I'll be able to have a good couple weeks before I'm in the same boat everybody else is at, where they're just sick of being stuck at home and they're sick of everybody. Yeah, I'm gonna put a 3 there. Gosh darn, hot glue gun strings. And I've seen hot glue gun sticks at stores where they're like, "Oh yeah, they do less of the string thing," and I'm just like, "That's cool, but I don't think I'd spend extra money on that feature." Phoenix, Arizona. Dang, man. The sad part is that none of my friends are following the stay-at-home policy. Dang. They've all been partying without me. Sorry, man. Oh, that's rough. And that is the thing, is it's like the staying at home it's for everybody else's benefit. It's not about staying at home is not for you. It's not an act of cowardice. It's not to keep yourself safe. It's to keep too many people from getting sick at the same time, and just the hospitals getting completely overwhelmed. And no one wants to sound like the fun police. If it's like, look, what you're doing is selfish. Yes, it's life, but it's still selfish. And that's the kind of thing of these like sort of pandemics have happened at other times in history, but we are now at a point where we have all the information, we have all the tools to fight this, and the staying at home is how we fight this. It's like when Extra Credits did a really good video talking about the Spanish flu, and just talking about America hitting a point where we ran out of coffins. It's like we have the ability to not be put in that position, but it takes sacrifice. And those sacrifices matter. Not getting to do what you want matters. It sucks, even if, it's real easy for somebody else to say, oh, well, that dumb thing you wanted to do is just dumb, and you should be fine not doing it. It's like, no, it still sucks. But it's temporary. It's one of those things that it's like this will just be another thing we talk about further on down the line, and people will know who handled it well and who didn't. And yeah, there are going to be some people who will make jokes. We'll still treat it all like it's a game. Because there's always people like that. I feel like I'm having one of those conversations where you just like keep digging a hole deeper. Hard part is not being able to meet for D&D. Oh, dude. God, that's got to be awful. Like, I wish I could find a group out here. And it is... Some people just aren't into doing it online. And especially if all your friends, want to do it in person. Yeah, no, if that's the main social thing, giving that up really sucks. Which that was actually that was what I was listening to before I shut it down to make sure it wasn't causing problems with the stream. As I was listening to Acquisitions Incorporated, the C Team, which is a D&D live streaming show. Which I haven't watched the newest batch of episodes yet, which is not like a commentary on the newest batch of episodes. I just hit a point where it's like, I want to go back and watch through from the beginning again. And I've kind of just like been on that kick where I'd rather continue to watch it from the beginning than watch the new stuff that came out. Which is really not a reflection on the new stuff. It's just, continuing with the story from where I'm at. That, and I don't know. There have been days where it's just kind of hard to enjoy stuff you like. That's just kind of what the quarantine can sometimes do to you. You can hit a point where nothing feels fun. But, everybody's got their own ways of dealing with stuff like that, and I'm just trying to stay active Wow, no, that is really. I hope that's just my phone stuttering on displaying it and not. Um, I hope it's not cutting out in black screening for everybody else. Okay, all right. As I dig through all my half scales, see if I've got. Is kind of what I need there is like a 3/4 scale. I might just get a regular scale and nip a corner off. I try to avoid that as much as I can, just in case I do. I mean, I'm not going to run out of scales. Like I said, I cut like twice as many as I need. So frankly, I probably shouldn't be bothering with that at all, as this is one of those things where it's between costing yourself materials and costing yourself time. And that is 100% costing me time, and it's craft foam. So as far as materials go, that is to so I've got chat for the horrific